Hi guys, Meryl from DiffBot here. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to throw them into the chat during the talk. I'll also have a brief Q&A after demos at the end of the talk. So I'm going to throw a link on the screen. If you don't already have a DiffBot subscription or trial account, you could grab a free, no credit card needed 2-week trial. This will be helpful if you want to follow along with some of the demo sections, and I'd suggest you do that through the intro or watch back through and follow along with the trial once the webinar is on demand. And those on-demand past webinars can be found at the link on the screen. I should also add that for anyone signing up for a trial today, if you'd like to review any of our products we're going over today on G2, we'd be happy to extend your trial period for free. So diving right in, our topic today is using external data to enrich internal databases, basically data enrichment. So what is data enrichment? Data enrichment is a process that allows businesses to merge many different data sources together. The output is a unified source of data that's more valuable than any one constituent part. Most commonly, this involves some internal data store and the act of pulling in external data from industry data providers, from data resellers, from the public web, from web scraping, and so forth. So why is data enrichment important? Many studies have shown that data decays at a rate of roughly 30% a year. This is going to vary depending on data type. Historical records don't tend to change, but when you're talking about things like contact data, data for leads, firmographic data, like office locations, technographic data, revenue, size of a corporation, and definitely things like sentiment around a topic online, pricing, or the status of some event in the world, these things are going to decay pretty quickly in most cases. And to pull out a few stats around this, 18% of phone numbers change annually. Americans move almost 12 times throughout their life. Almost a quarter of all emails decay in a given year. And so the outcomes here are things like poor sales efficiency, the inability to perform effective market intelligence, inaccurate machine learning models, among many other negative outcomes. So what are the functions of data enrichment? First up, we have cleaning data, basically standardizing the format, removing errors, making data searchable and sortable. Secondly, we have deduping data, so gaining one authoritative record per entity, and this helps you gain accurate aggregate views of your data and make it easier to keep that one entry accurate and up to date in the future. You have optimizing data, so you want particular fields more than others. You may not need certain fields, or fields may need to be properly typed to make certain evaluations. These things may factor into CRM usability or the speed of your database. You have the function of merging data, so can you reliably pull in and match up data across some field? Can you do this without needing to pull in technical help, or do you have the technical help you need to implement merges? And finally, purging data. So there's going to be some threshold for what constitutes a record you can acceptably let go of. It's no longer helpful. It's cluttering the view. So you want to be able to control this and effectively choose what is purged en masse. So next up, what features are important for data enrichment? So some of the type of things you should evaluate in a data enrichment solution include things like integrations. You can pull the data right into where you need it, where you want to work on the data. Data provenance, particularly the ability to see where and when facts are sourced. The ability to track the freshness of data. The ability to specify what freshness you need in your data. The ability to set a threshold for how accurate data should be, and the ability to reconcile external data with your content or privacy policy. Next up, let's look at how DiffBot factors in here. So quick backstory, DiffBot's one of only a few North American entities to crawl the entire web. Using natural language processing and machine vision, we gather entities and facts about them from publicly available sources. Presently, we have several billion organization and person entities, as well as many more article, product, and other entity types. So each one of these entity types has its own set of fields. For example, an organization may have employees or a funding round or industries. A person entity may have employer, a list of skills, a publication history, and so forth. All of these entities are pulled into our knowledge graph. And while knowledge graph search combs the KG to return entities that meet a given criteria, our data enrichment product Enhance combs the KG with a different matching algorithm. And this is meant to return the most accurate match. So it's built to take an entry you have some data on, match it up to one of our entities, and enable you to then return all fields of data that are attached to this entity. 2 points that are key to focus on here is that each entity in our knowledge graph has origins for where we've gained facts and when it was crawled. And you can even refresh data by specifying you want these origins recrawled. Additionally, each entity in the knowledge graph is linked to other entities. So once you have a unique identifier for the organization or whatever you're enriching, you can get a view of linked fields, people, products, articles, and more. So with this introduction done, I would love to jump into DiffBot's dashboard at app.diffbot.com. Feel free to follow along if you have a trial or a subscription. And basically, I have a sample data set here. Let me pull it up on the screen. Let's say maybe these are leads gained through a form, or maybe it's the start of an account-based marketing list. These are basically AI companies, companies that at least partially work in AI products, and they are located in San Francisco. But we don't have much information about them outside of their name and their URL. And I should note here that I'm about to show you how this works in the dashboard, but you can do this via API as well as with our Google Sheets and Excel integrations. For API usage, we have a really helpful Google Colab document that could step you through making your own bulk enhance calls, and I will share that later in this talk. And really, any of these non-API centered methods work. If you export data from something like Salesforce, you can enrich the data in a CSV and then use a tool like Salesforce Data Import Wizard to pull in additional fields. But back to the dashboard, I have a spreadsheet. It has close to 1,000 companies. They do something related to AI and are in San Francisco. Basically has their name and their URLs. If you have additional information, such as a location or a description, these can help make match rates even better, particularly if the name of your organization may be shared across many entities. You can copy and paste these in, but in my case, I have a CSV, so I will just quickly locate this, upload it. I'll name the bulk enhance job and click submit. And when you submit a bulk enhance job, you're basically in a queue. It seldom takes long. Momentarily, you should see, yes, several hundred results already coming in. You may also notice these two fields at the bottom of the screen, refresh mode and search mode. These are ways that you can attempt to control the freshness of your data or the sources on the web that you're inferring facts from. The difference here is that refresh mode recrawls all of the locations where a fact has been sourced about an organization to see if those pages have updated. And you can see all of the origin fields in our JSON results. So you can see where the facts were inferred and when they were inferred. And then search mode is essentially where we search the web for new sources for facts about an organization that we didn't know about in the past. If you know of any new sources, aka websites that have information that would update a given entry, you can specify which locations to search via API or our Excel add-in. And we see these two fields utilized in two circumstances. First, if you have a defined content or data policy that requires you to check on data within a time frame, say X months or Y weeks, users in this case typically use refresh and can define this in advance. So your policy needs you to update your entries monthly, and therefore you reuse refresh to ensure that every fact has been sourced within the last month. One thing to be aware of here is that to refresh data on an entity, it has to already be in the knowledge graph. We have to already have a set of sources we can refresh. So you may want to make sure you're getting a match before you implement refresh. Both refresh and search are very useful to some users, but they do take more credits to use. You're essentially crawling sites, which requires credits. So there's a trade-off, but it's very crucial functionality for some. Finally, a little bit more about search as opposed to refresh. This affects match rate more. Or if you know of a URL that has been really covering a given entity and you don't see it in the fact origins attached to the organization, you can specify that URL and we'll crawl it to potentially return fresher or additional facts. We'll also include this URL in future knowledge graph crawls related to this entity. So this is one way our knowledge graph is gaining better coverage of the entities you care about over time. But anyways, it looks like we're done with this bulk enhance. So let's jump in and take a look at results. These are available to download in JSON or CSV. And basically all fields available in the knowledge graph are available. If we click through to one of these results, it's basically a typical DiffBot KG organizational profile. We have firmographic data, social links, key individuals, industries, recent social media posts, technology is used, articles about the company, a summary. And if you've dealt with DiffBot knowledge graph data before, you know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. So if I click on CSV here, you can see the huge range of fields that we could return. We have employee size, industries, location, founders, NAICS codes, revenue, many fields, all sourced from the public web. I'm just going to toggle one field just so we can make a note of it. And this is a very useful field if you want to build off of this default output of enhance. It's called DiffBot URI. It's a unique identifier, and every entity in the knowledge graph has one. And once you have a list of these identifiers for given organizations, you can start to gain access to all the data that's linked to this organization as well. So let me show you what I mean here. Let's head back over to our bulk enhance job. And let's copy a DiffBot URI for one of our results. And the DiffBot URI is essentially just the URL to the organization page. So, you know, we could do this at scale via the API, but let's just say we want to run with Kaggle here. So now I will head over to Knowledge Graph Search, and I can start to grab other entity types that are linked now. This won't necessarily be necessary for all data enrichment scenarios, but many of the most powerful uses of DiffBot we see do cross product lines. And one way this happens is to use enhance for something like entity resolution, and then to, in an exploratory way, use crawling to gain more facts, or knowledge graph to gain more entities and labeled data, or the natural language API to parse unstructured articles or reviews about an org. So basically what I could do here is I could search for articles in our article index about Kaggle. So we toggle article as the entity type, and then tags contains label, and I paste in this DiffBot URI. And basically, our tags are where our AI has read through articles we've crawled through, and they've identified that the articles contain a given topic, in this case, the topic of Kaggle. And so we can see there are about 1,700 articles about Kaggle. We have fields like sentiment, date, where it's published, author, as well as the full range of every field attached to article entities. And, you know, and they're all related to an organization we care about, or maybe this is a set of organizations. For example, we could dive in more and check out the sentiment of these articles by saying facet sentiment. And we can see that news mentions of Kaggle tend to be quite positive. Alternatively, we can get a summary view of publisher country. And see that most articles are in the United States, China, followed by Japan. And this particular use may not be related to your data enrichment needs, but with some more advanced queries, we could do things like look for events mentioned in the news in relation to an organization. Maybe it's lead data that you're enriching, and this information lets you know that it's a good time to reach out. Basically, this data can be used for enrichment and very creative enrichment, as it's centered around organizations and it's sourced from basically any web-based signal you can think of. Next up, we're going to pivot a bit by checking out people data that is attached to this organization. So I'm going to paste this query in, but essentially what we're looking for here are people who have an employment of Kaggle, and then we want to facet by the name of their skills. So Kaggle has a bit of an educational bent. Teaching makes sense. It's also a data science company. So, mathematics, Python, machine learning all sort of makes sense. But focused on other orgs, this might surface something you didn't know that's actionable and can totally enrich your entry about a given organization. All of this is simply to show that the data in our knowledge graph is linked. You can use the unique identifier provided by Enhance, our data enrichment product, to connect this entity you have in some database to a world of external data. So next up, I just wanted to walk through a few ways you can enrich data with DiffBot. First up, real quick, we have a Google Colab document for anyone who wants to try out the bulk enhance API. With API access, you have the selection of the widest array of potential options for Enhance. You can specify how exact you want results to be. You can pass new sites to refresh data from, or sites that haven't been crawled to seek out data on an organization. All sorts of ways to toggle Enhance, to schedule Enhance, and so forth. And I will paste this link into chat if anybody would like to try it out for themselves. For non-API use, many users choose to run with our Spreadsheet integrations as well. Oftentimes, you'll have an export function for some sort of database you have. It might export to CSV. So we can enhance in Google Sheets or Excel. First up, I'll show Excel. And to follow along here, there are a few steps. Basically, you need to install the add-on and then log on with your token, which you can find in your account page at app.diffbot.com. But once you have the add-ons installed, they should always be attached to this account in whatever spreadsheet program you're looking at. So in Excel, I have the same list of organizations we put into the dashboard earlier. I can click on Open DiffBot Add-in, and then I can click Enhance. Basically, all we need to add here is a custom ID. This is basically a unique identifier so that we can merge our results of the Enhance back in with the original data set. So let me just add a number beside all of these. And then, honestly, all you need is to specify where's your custom ID, what column, and as many of the following fields as you have. In this case, we have name and URL. And similarly to the dashboard, the more of these fields you can supply, the likelier you'll get a very precise match. But honestly, most databases have many more fields than we are providing in this spreadsheet right here, even if it's just individuals filling out a form. So once we click Next, we can specify all the fields we want returned. We can also specify how strictly we want to match the organizations that are returned. If you aren't matching all the organizations you want, maybe the organizations you're pasting in have many orgs that share the same name and you haven't provided much organization, then you can change the number of matches per entity here. You can also change the threshold for a match. The default is 0.32, but when you raise the number, the bar is raised for how similar your input and your output need to be. Basically requires Enhance to be even more stringent. You can also go down if you want to cast a wider net. We sort of seldom see use cases where moving this from default is needed, but it is there, and there are some use cases where it's valuable to have. Anyways, we can click execute, and we can see our results starting to return. Simple as that. It is many, many fields straight from the knowledge graph, including many DiffBot unique identifiers that you can then jump into the knowledge graph and perform more analysis around. So next up, let's hop into Google Sheets. And I'll show you how you can perform data enrichment here. It's similar to Excel, but not entirely the same. In this case, you'll need the DiffBot for Sheets integration, which is free if you have a DiffBot subscription. But here we'll use a function. It's simply called enhance organization. And we need to specify what field we want returned. So you'll need some familiarity with how we name fields, which you can find in the docs, or if you're in the dashboard downloading results, it should all have a field label on them. So let's say I want to get the location of an organization. I just pass location and the name of the organization and hit enter. And voila. And this may be common sense for Sheets power users, but to show a little trick, you can also just use the column names here. So with an absolute reference to that cell. So I could say enhance organization, industries, and specify the organization. And this lets me drag across as well as simply drag down to return for many, many organizations. So that is what we had planned to cover today in the webinar. Again, this will be on demand afterwards if you wanted to follow along through bulk enhance in the dashboard using Google Sheets to enrich data as well as Excel. I have pasted the link to our Google Colab doc for those who would like to try API access for bulk enhance as well. And I will stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions.